Hello and welcome to the content talk on how to web with children. This particular content talk is copyrighted in conjunction with Judy Harris-Helm and her Certified Young Investigator training. We're going to be using this content talk to think about concept maps or webbings and their usefulness in planning project work. One of the first things that we do as teachers is we use this tool, the concept map, to conduct the teacher anticipatory planning web. This allows us to see the topic, the richness, and the curriculum that can be derived from the concept topics or the concepts within the topic that we're trying to determine, is this going to be a good project topic? Remember, we're going to start with that distance to self map. We're going to think about that child in the center of that map and look to see, is this going to be a relevant, meaningful topic, one that I can access resources for, both human resources, those experts and those field site visits, but also those artifacts that I can bring in. And most importantly, a project is really only a project when there's real questions from the children that can be investigated. And so this particular content talk is going to discuss how we web with children in the beginning of project work to learn what do they know about the topic. This background information that the web is going to give us is really important for us as a teacher because we can see collective knowledge. We can also see individual knowledge if we did individual child webs, which I have done before with children in my own classrooms and in classrooms where I've coached on the project approach. It's really interesting because when we create the webs with children, we're able to document their ideas, their misconceptions, and we go ahead and document those things because we want them to discover through their learning and make very clear the categories and the comments that really belong there with the topic. Webbing is easier for a teacher to do. It's easy because of the back and forth exchange that they can add to the comments and the categories. Listing is harder because we're just creating a list and it's all lumped together. And children, although they might be familiar with lists for certain purposes, in terms of representing intellectual ideas, it can be a little more challenging. So what is a web? It's a graphic representation of thought and ideas. It's really beneficial for understanding the relationship between two things or more things. This is important because we can connect those ideas, just like when we've worked on these in class together and we've noticed, oh, sometimes the characteristics of shoes also may be involved with the purposes of shoes. So we see those relationships. It's also, webs are also beneficial because they cue thinking, right? So it helps us not only to have initial thoughts, but to brainstorm. And when we're really wanting children to think intellectually, we want lots of brainstorming and planning to be involved. And then a web is really a visual record of children's thoughts. And when we're sure to put a timestamp on those webs that we create, we can have some really powerful documentation to compare and demonstrate how are children learning across time. And finally, we can think about that we can update these. And so sometimes what teachers will do is have a time one web and it will be its own. Other times, teachers will create the time two web right within the time one web. So that's one way to help show that knowledge and concepts of growth. And again, it's a way to document. We're seeing the thinking and the knowledge recorded over time. When we look at webbing, and part of my little picture there is covering up part of the phases, but this is also a part of the project approach book. We will be able to access a free planning journal that comes with the purchase of this book, but it's actually available free online, and so the link to that will be on this week's week by week folder. So when we web, you can see that we've got a couple of places here. Let me see if I can pick up my pen and highlight those. I'll highlight those in purple, even though there are some arrows there. So we've got the teacher webbing. The teacher webs about current concepts. So for example, 2 years ago, I was working in a classroom, a Head Start preschool classroom with 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, very diverse group of children, and they really seemed to be interested in pets. And so what we did is we sat down with the children once we had really given some, we did our anticipatory web, which is way up here. We thought of possible questions the children might ask. We examined resources. We knew between the 3 of us, actually there was 2 classroom teachers and myself, we thought, okay, we have a lot of pet artifacts we can bring in. We knew that there were teachers in the building that could be experts because we didn't know if school policy would let us leave, but actually we were able to go to Petco. Once we knew that these focusing activities were really helping the children be interested in pets, we then knew, okay, yes, this is of high interest. Now we're ready to web with children. Oh, these lines are terrible. Let me get these off of here for a second. All right, so we knew we were ready to web with children. This meant we had to think about the concepts and the understanding that would go with pets. Then later in phase 2, you're going to come back and you're going to revisit the web or re-web again with children. This allows you to know, do we have more questions? Should we continue in phase 2? Is there more to be investigating? And then finally in phase 3, when you're planning for documentation, you always want to have that final web that you can show the learning over time. You know, it seems simple, really, this idea of webbing, but there are some things that sometimes we might not grasp when we're actually doing this with children. And so we want to carefully just talk about these steps as we go. Let me get rid of my highlighter. Oops, nope, my highlighter's still there. All right, so we want to web familiar topics before we're doing a project. And so this is helpful, just like we've had some in-class practice with furniture or shoes or cars, you know, we're thinking about what are those concepts, and just, you know, even though Laura Taylor's example in the camera project that's in the book has many different categories, focus first on the 4, and then the more experience that you have, the more topics and concepts that you'll be able to add. With the children, you're going to introduce this idea of a graphic representation. You're going to talk to them about, today I'm going to write down what you're saying. I'm going to draw lines and shapes to show how these ideas that you're saying go together. We're going to talk about cars. I'm going to draw a circle and I'm going to write car in it. And you model this for the children. And you can't see that with my little picture. Let's see if I can scooch me over. So we've got cars over here with the circle. Then we're going to put all kinds of things we know about cars, and it will be around this web. So this is when we think about how webbing is more brain compatible, because it really is how the brain thinks. The brain connects ideas. It represents, this webbing represents our neural networks that's happening. And so we're able to emphasize the relationships between the concepts that we're writing about. So you can say, oh, you said the car has wheels. Let's put wheels in a new circle. It's a part of a car, so we'll make the circle smaller. Wheels. And at this point, I might even write parts of a car, because I know as the teacher, we're going to probably have uses of cars, purposes of cars. We're going to have characteristics of cars. Wheels are definitely a characteristic. Now I will draw a line because it shows that this circle tells us something about cars. So then you show the children how you're going to connect those things. We use webs for a cue to extend children's thinking. Do you have something to say about wheels? So now you'll spend a little time with the children on wheels. They're round. I'll write that down here, round. Now I'll draw a line to it because I'm connecting that idea. What else do you know about wheels? See those open-ended questions happening? Oh, they're black. On my car, they're black. Oh, there's 4 of them. What else do you know? They go flat. Oh, you're right. You can get a flat tire. And so on. And that's how it goes. Can you tell me more about going flat? And then the child might say, there's a nail in them. And so you would write that down. You can fix a flat. So there you can see that the children are continuing to think about concepts and their connections. So here's a web. It's a nice web, but it is actually a combination of listing and webbing. So you can kind of see where there's some elements of, here's the listing going on over here. Where else do we see listing? Oh yeah, right over here, dog face, monarch, butterfly. So we really want to think about how to make sure that we really expand. Sometimes if we place words in a list, there's less room for expanding and adding and connecting. So always make sure that you're actually using a space, that your space can adequately capture all of the potential brainstorming that goes on. For example, the life cycle of a butterfly, which let me find my little marker again, it's over here. Notice that the life cycle is followed by a list: egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, butterfly. If the children have lots more to say about eggs or caterpillars, there's no place to really put that in a meaningful way because you're not able to connect it because it's in a list format. So it can shut down a really good discussion that children might be wanting to say. If instead these had been placed as branches around the life cycle, then there would be more opportunity to talk about the relationships and about those individual features of the life cycle. Webs can be updated to show changes in knowledge and concepts. So we're going to look at 2 slides of the kindergarten turtle project. So this is the initial web. You can see Linda Lundberg of Parker Early Education Center. And it shows that they have some knowledge, but not a whole lot of knowledge. And then we can look at the time too. In the second web, the teacher was really able to branch out and record. And we could even say this one might be improved upon by going ahead and having the visual cues there of the different concepts, right? So we've got the topic in the middle. Let's just make that topic circle. Here's our topic, what we know about turtles, and then we're building our concepts. Girl turtles, boy turtles. Something about teeth, right? Something about they're quiet, water, have shells. If we were going to make an anticipatory planning web for the teacher, the teacher's going to organize this probably in a different way than what the children have said, because here the teacher is organizing the web as it's happening with the children's comments. So we can already see that there's things about characteristics, how turtles move, the body parts of the turtle, types of turtles. Those are already ideas that are emerging. And as the teacher, we can have our web reflect those concepts differently. So now we can compare the growth. We can see how much they've learned between the 2 webs from the experiences that we've provided. And that's a real benefit to having the webs. So final thoughts about webbing. Children need some background knowledge and vocabulary. So it's always great to start projects off with webbing because it gives us an understanding of the baseline of the group. Like I said, you can do individual child webs, and in class I'll show you some examples of those. It's really important to do focusing activities at the beginning of the project because we need to give everyone a chance to have some messing around with the topic, which really allows children who maybe don't have as much knowledge get familiar with the topic at a very entry-level manner. Children get better with practice. Some of you are in schools or in classrooms where teachers are already, you're going to see webs hanging on the walls. So in those instances, the children know exactly what's happening. When children have not webbed before, it's a new experience, and that's why it may seem awkward that you're saying, I'm going to draw a circle around this concept. It's an idea about something, and now you're going to tell me what you know about it. It may seem foreign to you, but you're really enriching their vocabulary by all of the language modeling, the self-talk and the parallel talk, the repeating and the extension of ideas that will happen. And then we use webbing in other activities besides project work. Really, we can use webbing for just about any concept that we're teaching. Or, for example, about a book that we're going to read and we want to think about comprehension or prediction. So there's lots and lots of uses. Keep that in mind as we move throughout the semester and investigate webbing.